Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years. They produce a whole host of different styles and for that reason they are one of my favourite Swedish breweries. But yeah, for this one, we are going to head back up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. We're going to go out to the east of the city once again to Landvetter, very close to the airport, and that means that we're taking a look at another beer from the wonderful Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called the Fort. It comes in at 6.5% ABV. It's a member of the Bite series, and that means it's a West Coast IPA. So yeah, this one was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021, and it was released along with the River. So this month, with the two West Coast IPAs they've released, they're looking at different hops. The River was a Citra hopped IPA. This time we have an Amarillo one. So yeah, really looking forward to this. As you might know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, Amarillo was one of my favourite hops. Citra, Amarillo, Simcoe, these are probably the three old school high alpha acid American hops, but I always enjoyed Amarillo because I'm a bit of a sucker for orangey flavours. So definitely looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. I have been enjoying the West Coast IPAs from Dugas in recent times, and you can feel them getting better and better every time they do them. I think this is like the fifth or sixth West Coast IPA we've had from these guys now, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dugas Brewery before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to because there's so many Swedish beers these days. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Dugas Bryggeri once again, onto my brewery notes. So Dugas Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Landvetter on the outskirts of Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. And the brewery was established back in 2005 to the south of the city in Mölndal by Mikael Engström Dugas. So these guys are fairly well established, it has to be said. But a few years prior to this, Mikael had actually met an Englishman who was selling second-hand breweries, and this really got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So he studied the Swedish alcohol laws, which at the time were admittedly very complex. They still are quite complex today, in fairness, but he visited various other breweries around the country and started buying up equipment to put together his own brewery, and this culminated with the opening of their first facility in Mölndal back in 2005. Over the following years, they continued to grow this brewery as much as they could, but by 2009, they'd outgrown this original facility, and so they moved over to Landvetter up to the kind of northeast the following year in 2010. The older brewery at maximum had a capacity of around 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year, but the new brewery started off with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres, and this has been more than doubled in recent years. And I think they're constantly adding new tank space, so Dugas Bryggeri is forever growing basically. But over the years, the brewery became very well known for their fruit and sour beers and also for their imperial stouts in the early days. Probably two of the classic beers that you would want to try from this brewery would be the Tropic Thunder, which is a kind of cult classic Swedish sour beer these days. I would always recommend that. And the Egypt was always a really good one as well. I've never tried the original Egypt, but I've had the big Egypt, but a lot of people have told me the original one was very nice. So I would love to see them do a rebrew of the original Egypt. That would be really nice to see. But they were actually known for a period of time as Dugas Ull or Porter Bryggeri as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, it was sours, it was fruity sours and big dark beers they were known for, but in recent times they've been brewing a lot more IPAs. So they've got various different series. They've got the Fresh and the Crush series, which are New England IPAs. They've got the Bite series now as well, which is the West Coast IPA series, of which this is a member. They've now got a wheat beer series as well, which I forget the name of. I reviewed my first beer from that a few weeks back, and they've also got their Future series as well, which is their barrel aging series. They do a lot of really interesting barrel aged beers. But the other point to note about this brewery is that they're one of the co-owners of the two brewers beer bars in Gothenburg. They co-own these along with All In Brewing, and I believe as well with Electric Nurse, who are owned by Mikael's daughter Ida along with her husband John, and they brew a number of their beers at Dugas Bryggeri as well. Quite a few of the Omnipollo beers are actually brewed, especially the big Imperial Stouts. Quite a few of those are brewed at Dugas Bryggeri as well. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Dugas Bryggeri for the moment. Like I said, a very, very well respected brewery here in Sweden these days. And what I would say is just pick a style of beer that you like from these guys, and I think you will enjoy it. But yeah, it's been a lot of IPAs in recent times. It would be nice to try a few other styles from them. I think I would love to try, a Doppelbock and things like that. I know they've had a Schwarzbier at one stage, so I'll need to have a little look at that. But I would love to try a Scotch ale from Dugas as well. I don't think I've ever had a Scotch ale from them, come to think of it. So yeah, they've got a few Imperial Stouts coming out again, so I'll need to decide what my next Dugas beer is going to be. I've got one more sour to take a look at. Actually, they've got a series of single fruit sours actually, which I forgot to mention. But yeah, you'll see me review one of those at some point fairly soon as well, actually. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can really tell you about Dugas Bryggeri for the moment. You will no doubt see more reviews on the channel from these guys fairly soon. But if you want to learn more about the brewery in the meantime, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yes, let's crack on then and have a taste of this beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open up. But as you can see, it is fairly standard from what we've come to expect for Dugas Bryggeri. Plain gold bottle cap, as you always seem to get, and it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. And there you can see Bite Series IPA, and also Toppenish Amarillo, but we'll come to that just now. So it says, yeah, this is the Fort. We welcome you to Fort Road, Toppenish, Washington, USA, with this Bite Series West Coast IPA, hopped with Columbus for some bitterness, but the real star here is the Amarillo hop, which gives the beer the aroma and taste experience of all the orange citrusiness you've come to love, South Side. So yeah, the other one, I think it was it River Avenue or something? So yeah, they're basically taking hops from different hop farms in Washington for these, and doing essentially they're doing single hop West Coast IPAs, because Columbus, as we know, that's a big spicy sort of bittering hop actually. Columbus and Chinook were always the ones that you would use as the bittering hops in the West Coast IPAs, and then you would add the other hops later on in the boil to give you the flavour. But yeah, so these, it's kind of interesting. This is an interesting idea. I would love to see a few of the newer hops, like some Enigma from Australia, things like this. I'd love to see a few of the newer hops that have come out since the West Coast IPAs were popular, put in beers like this. But yeah, certainly looks very nice. 330ml bottle. I think I paid about 35 Swedish kronor for this, so €3.50, about £3, just over £3 sterling, and then about $4.25 American for this little 330ml bottle. But yeah, it says it contains wheat malt as well. So yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Always nice to review something new from Dugas Bryggeri. So yeah, there we are. Let's get it out and into the glass. A little bit of smoke on the opening. And there we go. Yeah, that goes together very nicely. So yeah, let me just readjust this and check that my OCD is happy, and I can say I'm happy enough with that. But yeah, this looks very, very nice. So as you can see, this beer is poured with a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and it has a nice, actually has a nice little touch of natural haze to it, but you can see the beer has poured a very, very light amber actually. When I put the light through it, you can see a few little bits of particle just floating around, as you'll often get in these beers. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, but very typical of what we've seen from other beers in the Bite series from Dugas Bryggeri so far. But yeah, in terms of the colour, remember the colour of these beers is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. Usually a West Coast IPA will be between 70 and 90 minutes wort boil, and I would think this one is actually quite pale compared to some of the others that I have. I think Dugas Bryggeri tend to use fairly straightforward malt bases. They don't tend to put all that many different malts in their IPAs. At least they do in the imperial stouts certainly, but not so much in the IPAs. But yeah, lovely light amber colour this one, and certainly what you'd expect from a Dougus West Coast IPA. Absolutely, not really much more to say about the appearance of this one. Kind of looks as you'd expect. The head has incidentally just faded away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer now, but it does leave a little bit of that nice kind of cream coloured ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I'm quite curious about this for sure. It does smell pretty nice actually. I've missed the Amarillo hop. I'm glad to see that it's getting a little bit more attention again, because you know, you see this, a lot of hops go in peaks and troughs. You know, Amarillo disappeared really when Mosaic came on the scene, and then the same thing happened to Simcoe when Galaxy appeared as well. You know, Simcoe disappeared at the expense of Galaxy for quite a while, and then Victoria's Secret made a little bit of a re-emergence, but now we're seeing Simcoe coming out a little bit. But yeah, the one that never disappeared was Citra, right enough. But I think Citra's so complex on its own that is what kind of saved it, if you like. But you know, all these hops are coming back. But yeah, the aroma of this one is quite nice actually. The first thing that strikes me about it is that it comes across as quite a biscuity, sort of brown bready type beer actually. I think the aroma of this one goes together very, very nicely. So yeah, it's kind of what you'd expect. It is quite similar to the other Bite series beers we've had from Dougus before, but their West Coast IPAs have been getting better and better, in my opinion. But yeah, let's kind of describe the aroma a little bit for you then. So the backbone of this beer is a nice smooth kind of bready note. I would say it's how do you go? It's got a little bit of a kind of wholemealy brown bready sort of backbone to it. You can smell a few little grainy elements in there as well. But yeah, I think it works. I think it does go together really nicely, that actually, and it kind of suits the orangey vibe that this beer has. But yeah, nice kind of brown bready, grainy, wholemealy backbone, which I do like. On top of that, you've got a little bit of a sweet caramelly element to it. You've got a little bit of a kind of biscuity quality in there as well. So yeah, it's there's one or two little woody undertones to it, but I think the malt base is actually quite really quite straight shooting in a sense of this beer. But it does get more and more bready the more that you kind of smell it, which is interesting. So yeah, but yeah, brown bready base to it, a little bit of a wholemealy kind of bready thing. There's a little bit of a more bread crusty quality to it as well. You know, you do get a little bit of sweet caramel, as I say, a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity element in there, and one or two little woody undertones. That, I think, is your malt base in this one. So nothing overly surprising about that when it comes to this beer, in fairness, I would say. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's see. It's got a nice... I would say that this beer, it has a really nice sort of earthiness to it. You do get a little tiny bit of earthiness out of it, and that will be the Columbus that's giving you that. Columbus always gives you just a little touch of earthiness, but you can smell that nice big sort of spicy floral aromatic thing coming out of this beer too. You can really get a good chunk of that with this beer, absolutely. So yeah, nice big floral aromatic, you know, coming out of the beer for sure. I wouldn't say it's overly spicy. It actually does have a nice kind of just rich and deep floral aromaticity to it as well. So not madly spicy, but then on the front edge of the nose, it's got a nice kind of lighter, it's got a nice sort of lighter grassy element to it as well. So I do like how this beer kind of goes together from the green side of things. It's got a little bit of earthiness to build a good bridge with the more kind of grainy elements of the malt base, and then it's also just got a bright floral kind of thing that you would expect of it as well. It doesn't come across as too bitter in the nose, if you like, which is kind of interesting. But I remember with the last one, it was the same. It didn't smell so bitter in the aroma, but the bitterness really built a bit later on in the beer. So yeah, nice. It's got a little bit of a grassy, zesty sort of thing to it as well, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, the aroma out of this beer, I think, is is quite nice from the green side of things. I get more and more grassiness out of it the more that I smell of it. But then on the fruity side of things, it is pretty much what you'd expect. It's a kind of marmalade-y aroma to it. You get a nice big oily orangey character out of this one, and it's got a little bit of a lighter kind of tangerine note in there as well, and it gives you the impression of a kind of marmalade. Definitely, but there's one or two little, there's one or two little other things in there. You get a wee kind of appley, peary sort of thing, I think, as well, and maybe a teeny bit of a sort of limey note. There's just a wee tiny little bit of that in here with the grassy esters too. But yeah, the aroma is pretty much similar to the other. The aroma is pretty much similar to the other ones that I've had from the other West Coasters that I've had from Dugas Brewery before, and they've always been quite nice in that sense. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having a taste of it, so I think it's about time we crack into it there. I'm having brain farts when I'm thinking what to say next. But yeah, let's crack into this beer and see how we go. So this one is the Fort, 6.5% West Coast IPA from the Bite series at Dugas Bryggeri in Landvetter, just outside of Gothenburg on the Swedish West Coast. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. And yeah, it is kind of what you would expect, to be honest, but it's nice. It is nice. Again, you can feel the bitterness building in this one the further you go into the aftertaste. Yeah, it's another solid beer from Dugas. Is it the most striking one I've had from them? Probably not. But the thing is with Dugas, it's hard for them to top themselves because they've had a strong standard for such a long time. I do find it hard to find something from Dugas that really kind of blows you away, to be honest. But it's another solid take on the West Coast IPA. So yeah. So yeah, and again, it sort of strikes me as quite straight shooting. I mean, I have to admit, when it comes to, I don't know so much about the malt bases and things that Dugas are using, but when you have a look at some of the barley wines and things like that we had those two barley wines from Dugas recently, and they only used Pilsner malt, if I remember rightly. They were only using Pilsner malt in those. And for me, I mean, I think Dugas, I would love to see them experiment a little bit more with malt bases and things like that. I'd love to see them, play around with different types of malts and just have a little bit of malty complexity in their beers. I'd love to see them do that, because they've got the hoppy side of things very well, and their beers always come across as, nice and balanced in that sense. But I would love them just to have a little bit more kind of complexity in a sense, because I mean, when I try this one, there's, it's a solid enough beer and I like it, but with Dugas, when you see what they can do with imperial stouts and all the different malts and things and adjuncts and stuff that they put in there, I'd love to see them just be as innovative as that with their IPAs. I would think this beer maybe has a little bit of, Maris Otter or something like that. Why not play around and put like a bit of caramel in there, put a little bit of a kind of Pilsner malt as well, some Cara Munich and things like that. You've got a whole host of different malts that you could play around with these beers, and I think I do, as I say, with those barley wines that we had, they only put Pilsner malt in them, and I think they were nice, but for me, I think maybe Dugas, I think they're missing a little bit with their IPAs, and maybe they need a little bit more malty complexity to them. It's my opinion. I really like this brewer, as I say, but I would love to see them just play around with the malty side of their IPAs a little bit more and just give them a wee bit more complexity on that side of thing, particularly with the West Coasters, particularly with these kind of West Coasty ones actually. But yeah, it's just me in that sense. That is just me. I mean, the thing you have to say with these, when it comes to the West Coasters, you can kind of take them in two directions. They can either be big and oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo, or you can go down the more bready kind of biscuity route, such as the Pliny the Elder. This one goes down the more kind of bready biscuity route, and it's got those elements to it. but it comes across as really straight shooting in that sense. And, you know, in some cases, yeah, simplicity is good, and they're producing solid beers here. But I don't know what it is. There's just something that something tells me that the thing that Dugas could really use to make themselves stand out is using some of that malty complexity that they have, obviously, when they do imperial stouts in the IPAs. I think that could set them apart a little bit if they played around with that a wee bit. So yeah, because these West Coast IPAs, they are nice and drinkable, but in a sense, but they don't. I wouldn't say they kind of stand out massively, if that makes sense. I think that's a fair statement about these ones. Yeah. Because yeah, it is, as I say, it is nice and I like it, and it is a good sessioner. But I would love to see them just do something a bit more bold with the West Coast IPAs, and, you know, play around with that malty side of things. So yeah, I think that's I think that would be a nice thing to see Dugas do, because they're more than capable, definitely more than capable. But yeah, let's break down the flavour of this beer then and describe it for you properly. But straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice kind of brown bready, malty kind of thing there. You can feel that just forming the backbone of the beer. The further you go into the aftertaste, it does get progressively more sort of grainy. Absolutely, you do get a bit more dryness coming out of this beer, I think, and the bitterness builds, of course, as well, like I said earlier. But yeah, brown bready backbone, a little bit sort of grainy, as I said. You do get, you know, if you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you'll get one or two little woody undertones out of the beer, so I like that too. But yeah, that is very nice. In the centre of your palate, you get a nice kind of oily, you do get a little bit of an oily caramelly note out of it, and as you move further out from that, you start to get more of a sort of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity, grainy sort of thing, which again is kind of what you'd expect. So yeah, I think it works in that sense. It works. It's a very straight shooting malt base, like I say. I'd be curious to know what it's made of, actually. So yeah, I think there's maybe only one or two or three types of malts in this one, something like that. But yeah, it's solid enough and it works. As I said, I would just love to see some more malty complexity in these in a West Coast IPA. I'd love to see them do a big double, you know, 8.5%, 9% West Coast IPA. It's just got a good malty kick to it, actually. I would really like that, and then a big hoppy thing. But yeah, the malty side of this beer I think works pretty well. But yeah, in terms of the back third of the palate then, so if you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it's got it does have a little bit of a more, on that border region, it does build up a little bit more of a kind of doughy quality. You can feel a little bit of a thicker bready thing there, and a bit more of a bread crusty quality. And then on the back third of your palate, you get a bit more of a kind of, you can feel a little bit of the sort of wheaty bitiness there, and also some of the grainy elements that I was talking about as well. Sitting on top of that, you can feel the sort of more yeasty component of the beer sitting there. So the top of the flavour is a little bit higher, and as you move further forward, as I usually say, you can feel that sort of just drops away a little bit, and then as you reach that border region, it condenses, and then you've got a nice kind of quite dense flavour profile to the beer in the middle third of the palate. So yeah. But yeah, the malty side of this beer I think works, does work very, very nicely. So yeah, I certainly like how this one goes together in that sense. I would love it to be a little bit more complex, but I mean, I do wonder, maybe I'm wanting it to be a little bit more kind of oily and caramelly as well, because it is, I say, a more bready leaning West Coaster in that sense. Definitely, it's very authentic in terms of the bready side of the West Coast spectrum for sure. But yeah, I think that describes the malty side of this beer quite well. But yeah, onto the hoppy side of things then. In the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a little bit of an earthiness there, and as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality. Then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you can feel that slight spiciness and big green note building up from the Columbus. Absolutely, there's quite a little bit of that coming out of this beer for sure. And yeah, I really do appreciate that about this one. But yeah, nice big sort of floral note on the front corners of the palate. But then yeah, round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy, which I do like. You do get a wee bit of zestiness out of this, and this is one thing I noticed when I had the OO Brewing 100 Amarillo recently. It really showed the more zesty side of Amarillo, which I'd never really picked up on before. I'd always thought of Amarillo as being more oily, but yeah, I think it's quite nice in that sense for sure. You do get a little bit more zestiness out of this beer, but as I always say, on the front third of the palate, you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And I definitely think it works. But yeah, on the on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you definitely get a sort of you definitely get a kind of big a bit of a brown bready kind of element to this one. Absolutely, you can feel a little bit of that kind of thing building, and you've got a bit more of a grainy bread crust, and then the backbone of the front third of your palate is quite brown bready and grainy as well. So yeah, I like how that side of the beer goes together too. But sitting on top of that, you get the oily bubble where those fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, and it is all about the orange. There's no mistake in that. Absolutely no mistake in it. Yeah, it's actually quite nice, this. I'm seeing in this particular beer, and it's interesting to see the difference of how these hops behave in different types of IPA. Obviously, you've got a more oily malt base, a more oily and grainy malt base in a West Coaster than you do in a New England. So you really see the lighter side of the Amarillo in this one. It's got a big concentrated oily orangey quality, as I say, but then you can feel as you move towards the kind of out towards the extremities of that top third of your palate, it's got a lighter kind of tangerine element to it as well. So I can really appreciate with this beer how all those kind of light, the orangey elements have. You've got the more concentrated oily orangey note on the front part of the palate, and then around that you've got the lighter tangerine element as well, which reminds me a little bit more of Mosaic, ironically enough. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer I think is quite nice, and you're just getting the more zesty notes on the very front tip of the tongue too. So yeah, it's a solid, as I say, it's a solid enough West Coast IPA, this one. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit picky these days when I'm complaining about the malt bases and stuff, but quite a straight shooting malt base. But that's just how Dougas do their thing, both with the with the fresh and the crush, with the barley wines we had, and I think with this one as well. I would love to see them just use a bit, as I said, I would love to see them just use a bit of that malty complexity that they have in their stouts in the IPAs. I would love to see them just, play around with that a little bit. But yeah, overall as a West Coaster, solid drinkable beer. And you can't ask for much more than that, unless you're me and Moni. But yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things, mid-bodied beer, no doubt in my mind about that. Smooth carbonation. Yeah, mid-bodied, smooth carbonation, got an oily and quite slick mouthfeel to it overall. I would say that the bitterness in this beer, the bitterness in this beer is quite, I'd say it's maybe about 40 or 50 IBUs, something like that. It's definitely a little bit more bitter, and it takes a bit of time to show its head in that sense. It definitely takes a little bit of time to build, in honesty. But you've got a nice oily fruity character to this one. You've got a good little bit of a grassy zestiness coming out of the beer, and yeah, I do like how all of it goes together. But yeah, it's a nice enough West Coast IPA, this one, and I've enjoyed reviewing it for you. So we can leave it at that for this review. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dougas Bryggeri as well. Let me know what you think about the malt bases, the Dougas malt bases. I'd be interested to hear your comments on that. But I think another solid enough beer for this one. I would just love to see a little bit more malty complexity to it. So yeah, this one was the Fort 6.5% West Coast IPA from the Bite series at Dougas Bryggeri in Landvetter near Gothenburg in Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers, and catch you guys in the next review.